So, Chris, how should we call you? Is it Cookie?
Yeah, I've gone for cooking. I think
All
I
right,
don't,
that
I,
works.
I don't want to cause any drama. Calling myself Big Chris is a little bit of a power play there.
It is kind of funny that we have three Chris's though. I didn't even really put that together until you
I
said something. I was like,
as
oh
soon
shit.
as you mentioned Chris, I was like, oh shit, that's no problem.
Hey y'all.
Hey, Chris.
Everything that's wrong with capitalism, everything that's wrong with America, bit of Donald Trump and Brexit. Yeah, there's just no way.
That's a quick story. Can we fill an hour?
I can smash it in 5 minutes, but
It's all shit. There we go.
Here you go. It's all fun. So let's just see where we get through. We'll start with some economics as a religion. That lends itself to just the whole narrative being bullshit.
Yeah.
And we'll go to the American creation myth, amongst other religions. It might not be coherent, but it's going to be fun.
That's fine.
Does it have to be?
I've started drinking as well, so it's 3 p.m. on my side of it, so it's a little bit early, but
that's a respectable time.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 p.m. for me. I'm definitely still on the clock for like 3 more hours, but
you guys are just respecting our culture and our timeline by drinking with us.
That's right. That's right. Can't let you drink alone.
I know.
It's rude.
So thank you for meeting us halfway.
I'm joining in as well, by the way.
No one wants to talk about economics sober.
yeah, it's no fun.
No, all the people that do are completely batshit insane. That's the funny part.
That's right. Yeah, we have our freshwater school over here at the University of Chicago, and those guys probably do like to be sober and talk economics.
And those are the people that ruined the world.
And they ruined the world.
University of Chicago is where trickle-down economic theory comes from, right?
Yeah,
that's exactly right. So you're Paul.
It kind of comes from everywhere, actually.
Yeah, Milton Friedman. I was gonna say, I believe Margaret Thatcher for y'all was quite the trickle-down economist.
Yeah. No, the thing is for economics, it's that basically since its inception has been bullshit. Like since like the very first day, it's like, this is all nonsense to fuck over poor people for like 200 years. It was never different. It was always about, oh yeah, poor people are assholes. Let's take all the money they make and give it to ourselves, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That was like literally the position of like 19th century economists. They were like, poor people just eat all the money and don't do anything useful, so not give them any money and fuck it. That's like the biggest debate in 19th century economics. Yeah. Did we actually start yet?
We haven't. We should probably introduce everyone. I was about to jump in. I was like, wait.
I love it.
Okay, cool. I guess then let's talk about economics. But yeah, I guess this is what I talked about, that the 19th century, there was one big economic debate between two, like the second and the third biggest guy in economics. They're called David Ricardo and Robert Malthus. Not sure if you guys ever heard about them.
Yes.
But basically, their entire debate was, let's fuck poor people because they're idiots and lazy. And Malthus' entire argument was, let's give all the money to landlords. And Ricardo said, give all the money to the factory owners. That was basically the entire debate that they talked about. It was all just, how do we appropriate poor people? And it's like 150 years before Margaret Thatcher came along or Ronald Reagan.
Right.
It's basically economics has really been always just, let's fuck poor people and let's just ignore all the suffering in the world and just destroy everything.
Well, it's kind of interesting because even if you think about going back to feudalism, I mean, it was kind of trickle down economics during the feudal state where you had a mass of peasants tied to the land, and it was the benevolence of the king or the local lord or something along those lines that, you were able to meke out just a minimal existence.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think you can almost say the entirety of human history. I mean, even back, let's say 2000 years ago, ancient Greece was like, yeah, the first guys are democratic, but they are basically slave societies, and the entire wealth comes from like the people at the very bottom. And I mean, when you read Aristotle, for example, he was like, yeah, slavery is pretty great. It's working great for us. So why change it? And you get the idea of like that. Whenever people talk about economics, it's always like some rich guy talking about how to steal wealth from poor people. And that's like the history of the entire field, and it's completely ridiculous. And I don't know, did you guys ever have to study economics in high school? Like, did you have to suffer this bullshit?
Yeah, not in high school. We
or university.
would kind of, university was typically when most folks, you would start, especially in your social sciences kind of majors, you would have to take something like microeconomics or macroeconomics.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I don't know for you, Paul, but for me, it wasn't even going that far into the history. It was kind of like Adam Smith did some stuff. Karl Marx did some stuff. Let's get into some graphs and charts now.
Yeah, that's essentially what it was. There was no, running back in time to understand the foundation of the theory or where it all came from. You already accept that it's true. And then you move on from there. Like, yeah, this is reality. So let's see how it applies to these different scenarios. And never, questioning the foundation itself.
Yeah, but that's actually the really hilarious part that, so I studied economics like all the way. And I even got like a master in economic history. So I just had to suffer through the entire thing for a couple of years because I'm masochistic, I guess. But it's incredibly stupid. And basically where I came from, that in my second year, I did an exchange year to Japan, and the entire university was just a party university, and they didn't do anything. The entire business model of the uni was to let's get foreigners and make them talk to Japanese students so they learn English. That was the entire thing. So I spent an entire year doing fuck all for economics. And so then I came back to my home university and realized like, oh shit, those guys actually learned something. Fuck, I have to actually work myself. So basically I came then to economics with, I have to figure this out myself. So let's read some criticism of it, which they never talk about in the actual courses. Mm-hmm. And then I came across this really interesting book called Debunking Economics by Stephen Keen, which is about this 1,000-page book. It's quite heavy, but it goes through all of these models and just annihilates them. Like, you start reading and it's kind of funny, but it goes through it more and more and just shows how completely ridiculous it is. And so even when you study economics just in the beginner's level, they just show you some graphs, like here's a demand curve, here's a supply curve, and you kind of assume all of this is at least somewhat reasonable, or at least there's some research behind it. There is absolutely not. There's not even a tiny bit of quantitative research behind it. It's all what some dudes made up at some point that they thought was reasonable. And actually put this in the research documents in terms of the ridiculous shit they are assuming in there. So I guess let me just go through it. So for a demand and supply model to work, like the most basic thing in economics that you learn in the very first class, they have to assume there's only one person in the economy, or that every single person in the economy is an identical clone of that person.
Right.
And they also assume there's only a single good. Then they assume there's a benevolent dictator that redistributes all the wealth. And this is what they need to make this entire thing work. Then, there's a godlike auctioneer that makes market work, and it basically freezes time for things to function around. What else are they writing there? Oh yeah, and they basically assume that firms are designed in the least efficient way, and that's the only way for them for the theory to work. That they have this weird idea about how firms work, and it's just bullshit. And then
I mean, I've worked for some pretty inefficient firms, so that's,
that's true.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. But well, in university for us, it was always the cheese and wine model. Country A makes cheese. Country B makes wine. And then it would be like, how would country A have a competitive advantage? How would country B have an absolute advantage? And like that's
bullshit, by the way, as well. Like, that's not actually how things work.
Yeah.
Like, companies, they look at where do we make money. They don't care about, is this slightly more efficient in country A than in country B. They look, right. Okay, we produce here, we make money here, we produce here. Fuck it, why not? Mm-hmm. And like, all of this is just to make some arbitrary model work that they decided. Like, this is what you see in economics, and this is really what's the most frustrating thing about it. All of economics that basically created this pie in the sky economic theory that they assume is for the real world, but it really isn't. It's just this make-believe thing that it's kind of like, it really is like a religion that has no resemblance to the real world, but they assume it is. And that's really what you have to study in economics, that you just learn more and more abstract, random bullshit that has no relevance at all to anything reasonable.
But before we get too deep into the abstract random bullshit, let me let me pick apart the 4 centuries of economic theory.
Pick it apart.
Go ahead.
Well, look, here's my layman's beginner's understanding of the concept, right? So, like a lot of people, my parents wanted me to study economics because money. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to do psychology because I don't want to do what my parents tell me. So
naturally,
as I got into psychology, I found out that like all the interesting studies were kind of on the economic side of things, like why people do the things they do and game theory. And there's this really interesting body of research where they'd go and test all of these assumptions by the economists. And every single time they just couldn't find any of the results that the economic model would predict. And there literally is a term in psychology called a homo economicus or whatever, right? Which is just making fun of the idea that people would ever act according to the Reagan, Thatcher, greed is good model. And they fail that test every time to the point where...
Wait, it was a joke for you guys.
Yeah. We literally make fun of how economists think of people as irrational. I'm like, oh, look, they're behaving irrationally. Every time you're not selfish, psycho, you're behaving irrationally.
No. When you read economics textbooks, they literally say like, oh, homo economicus, that's how it works. For them, it's not a joke. That's the actual foundation of everything.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because I didn't necessarily study psychology, but my understanding of behavioral psychology is that humans make decisions based off of emotion and then cover it with logic afterwards. And that whenever someone has, some sort of accident or some sort of incident that impacts their ability to feel emotion. So not necessarily like, a sociopath or someone who can't feel empathy, but like I can't feel happiness or I can't feel sad. They actually lose their ability to make a decision. And they lose their ability to function in a workplace because they can still do the work, but they can't make simple decisions like, okay, I finished this project. Which folder do I put it in? I don't like it. They can't figure that part out.
Yeah, exactly that. So there's this weird theory we have of ourselves that we think it through logically, and then we decide, I'm not quite happy with the balance sheet. I think I've done this person more favors than they've done me. Therefore, I'm upset with them. Like, no, not at all. You have this instinct. You go off this sudden feeling that, I've had enough of this guy, man. Like, he's pissed off. And then afterwards, you'll get extra annoyed with the next thing he does to you. So absolutely feel the emotion first. And, we come across as entirely irrational weirdos if the game of life is to try and steal as many resources from your neighbor as possible. Now, that's entirely based on the idea that, and this goes back to the tyranny of feudalism you described before. Quite simply, anyone in life that has been like, I don't need society, I don't need friends, I don't need anyone looking after me, and I don't want to do anything for anyone else. How well do those people function and survive? Like, what are your chances of finding a mate? What are your chances of surviving a bad winter? Right? Like, we are a group species, and all of our behavior looks entirely irrational, in air quotes, until you understand that you're not going to survive a particularly bad winter or a drought if everyone thinks you're a selfish dickhead homo economicus, right? Like, we're playing a forever game. Look at even like online, the reputational marketplace, right? Like, if you start fucking people over, that's only going to last so long, and until you get a really bad reputation, no one wants to deal with you. And likewise, we're really good at not just managing our own reputation, but managing others. Look at things like gossip. So people love to gossip about when someone breaks that social contract, right?
Right.
Did you check out what that guy did to his ex? Oh, that was horrible, right? People know, people want to share that information. We have an instinct for it. So it's why if you look, do you know prisoner dilemma games?
Yeah.
Right? So you play a game with someone and you have the choice of either dick move, right? Taking more for yourself, or, okay, I'll take a little bit less and it'll be best in the long term. And despite the greed is good sentiment, most people, most of the time, choose to do the right thing. But what's really interesting is that people can tell within less than a minute of meeting someone whether they're going to do the dick thing or the right thing. People have a really honed instinct for that. And that for me shows that, we just have this instinct to want to form these groups where we can trust each other. And if you're there being, it just doesn't make economic sense, even in the short term, to be going around selfishly fucking people over.
Well, and that's really been one of the real, I don't even know what, the strength of capitalism is that it hones on a small percentage of the human populace that are sociopaths, and gives them the power to function. Even Jeff Bezos is a sociopath. Most of our monarchs and bankers, and I think, there was a study back in the 80s where on Wall Street you had, just a huge proportion of sociopaths in the financial sector. And that's what we've done, is we've a system that has given the keys of power to sociopaths and not to, the general populace who does have empathy for their neighbor and is not going to do the dickish thing every time.
Well, that's almost the beautiful thing about economic theory in a really dark sense, is that it's all made so that the oligarchy can explain their reason for being and get everyone else to buy into that. So, it used to be a monarchy and the power came from God, and that's why I'm king, and that's why I'm able to give everyone, authority over you. And now it's just science. It's survival of the fittest. I'm rich because I deserve it and I worked really hard. And, if you work really hard too, you can get to where I am. So it just gets everyone to the
invisible hand of the market, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You used to have Latin Bibles, and now you have just dense economic textbooks that when you read, you're like, I can't understand that. I guess these guys deserve to be rich.
Sure. Maybe I'll think of something great, then I'll be rich too, because that's what everyone says. It's just, it's part of the zeitgeist now. Everyone just buys into it.
I need wine. This is getting depressing. So.
Bound to.
I remember, when I first looked at economic theory, and I just had this moment where I was like, no, this doesn't make sense. Like intuitively, like that supply and demand curve and all the examples you were alluding to, Christian. And I thought it was just me. I just thought like quantum physics, right? Like everyone can understand Newtonian physics, and then you get to, Einstein and Stephen Hawking, and you like the metaphors he uses, but you don't understand really beyond that. And you go, okay, it's just a level too far for me. And it was the same with every economic theory I ever read. It was like, I'd understand the metaphor they used. It's kind of like this. And when they got into, therefore, a bunch of squiggly lines on a graph, I'm like, no, that just doesn't make sense. But it sounds like what Christian's saying is that my instinct was right. It doesn't make sense. You've got to mute, Christian.
Yeah, we've lost you, Christian.
I desperately need you to validate my stupidity.
Yeah. I'm on pins and needles here. Come on.
Am I right?
The invisible hand of the free market doesn't want you speaking.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
The corporate tech structure is saying we're getting too dangerous.
Zoom knows, man. Every time we get whenever we start getting radical, that's when Zoom shuts us down. It's a thing.
But
I feel like we never really introduced ourselves or said hi, by the way.
Yeah, hi.
We probably should. We didn't really introduce the show or anything.
Yeah. All good. Chris, I live in South Carolina. And yeah, we've been doing this podcast now for a little bit, Real Politik, and kind of stay on a little bit more of the more radical side of stuff. We do like to go down the occasional conspiracy. We focus on American politics, but we have looked at a lot of international going-ons.
Yeah, I've been checking you guys out. It's a very fun podcast. I'm Chris Cook. My podcast is called Beyond Binary Thinking. And,
yeah.
As soon as I saw you guys, I think it was on Reddit, and then we started checking out some of your episodes. I saw like kindred spirits, shall we say?
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Paul Holden from Politik, and I've been listening to quite a few of your episodes. The Black Lives Matter one was great. The Satanic Temple, that's the right one, right? Those ones were great as well. I always get that messed up with Church of Satan. But yeah, you guys are doing some really good work. And like you said, it's very similar. We avoid any sort of tribalism and just try and approach the shit show that is happening in America with as objective of as possible.
I think it's incredibly hard to do though, like to avoid tribalism. This is, my background in psychology coming through again. I just understand the instinct, right? We all love to find a little echo chamber of people that say, yeah, you're right. Your ideas are good. It's okay, Chris. You weren't stupid. Economics is done.
Yeah. Well, that's my trick has been my echo chamber is just my Chris and then our boy John, and we just shit on everyone from there.
Just debate each other, right?
Yeah.
Come at me, bro. It's
so
a very male way of dealing with these things. So it's like, yeah, let's just argue about it. I love it. And then get drunk.
Just get out.
Well, and Chris, one of the things kind of to go to your previous point about wanting to be a part of that tribe and how strong that need is. It really is, I think, a human need. I was listening to an interesting podcast about some of the protesters out in Portland, and they've been protesting now for 2 months, and they're doing it every single day. And some journalists went down and were just like, what, you've been protesting now for 45 days straight, 12 hours a day. Like, why are you doing it? And they're like, this is the first time that I have felt a part of something and that I am doing something. And that's a strong pulse. We've seen, I'm pretty sure this is over in the UK and Europe too. We've seen a real decrease in the church. I mean, the power of the church has been pretty much demolished as far as it was a couple decades ago.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, I presume it still has power in America, but it seems to be in its death throes.
Waning. It's waning for sure.
Whereas in Europe, it's just a joke. It's just a social club for a few old people.
But where does that
in fact, all the churches are turning into hipster cafes now. That's what no one goes. I'm serious.
But where does that religious fervor go?
Because we still have the instinct for it, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where does it
absolutely.
go? And it goes in. It's gone into politics. The religious fervor has gone into politics, and I know, especially here in America, we can see it in the QAnon kind of conspiracy that's going on. I don't know if that's penetrated much over in the UK, but
yeah, it's the reason I don't Twitter anymore. Sure.
Right. Yeah. But then on the left, we kind of have this kind of woke kind of leftism.
And you have this inquisition, right? Of going around. Absolutely. Who said the wrong thing? Right. We've gone through your past and we have found some wrong speak. Like, you shall be burnt as a heretic.
35 years ago, you did this thing and we're canceling you now.
It's all about the original sin. What was the original sin of America and kind of going.
If you look at the idea of internalized racism, it really does mirror that, right? We all have sin in us. There's no way you can prove you're not racist. We all have racism in our hearts.
And you have to tithe and you have to, perform the sacraments to show I am a part of the new foundational structure that is woke leftism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's where, the anti-racism, and then what was the book by the Italian woman?
About backlash, white fragility.
Yeah, white fragility. Yeah, it's like all of white fragility. Everyone is racist always, and there's nothing you can do about it. All you can do is try and squash your internal racism every day. Although that book had a very corporate-centric structure to it. It was all about what happens inside of companies.
Selling her consultancy course, right?
Exactly.
And that's a hell of a racket when you approach a business and be like, you're about to face a bunch of woke lawsuits. Would you like to pay us $10,000 to show that you've paid, what's it called, penance, when you bought your way out of perjury with the Catholic Church? You'd be like, but we
indulgence, I believe, got you to heaven. Yeah.
The buying of indulgences. Yeah.
Am I back now?
You're back, Christian.
No!
Oh no, we just lost you.
He was about to say something bad about the economy again. Jeff Bezos is just finger on the
He knows.
So profound. It was about to be so profound.
Does it work now?
Yeah, there we go.
Oh my God. I don't know what's wrong.
I do. It's Jeff. I like to call him Jeff.
I'm being sabotaged by the universe.
Dude, you left for 5 minutes and we insulted everyone on the right and everyone on the left. So, yeah. That's what happens when you leave us.
It's very easy to insult people left and right because it's Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It's much of a challenge.
So this is funny to me. Like, I think Joe Biden would be too right for the Conservative Party in the UK. Like, I don't think.
Thank
this
you.
is my perspective on American politics. You don't have a left wing. You have people complaining about tweets, and you have people deciding which part of the government to sell off and privatize next.
No, Chris, you just became my favorite person on earth. I scream about this constantly to everyone that I know here. I'm like, no, these ideas are not radical. They're status quo. And even the Democratic Party can't accept them. Like things like Medicare for all. Like these are things that every country does.
In a pandemic, you still have libertarians who are like, maybe the invisible hand of the free market will solve this problem.
Yeah, we have 15% of people unemployed who lost their insurance, but no, let's still tie it to your employer.
It'll work out somehow.
There was a while ago, like some humanitarian aid thing went to the southern part of the US and tried to give people dental health care. And they published some images, and it was the most horrifying thing. Like, there's literally a thing going around where people make their own dental kits because they can't afford an actual dentist. So you'd get like drills and needles and shit to like get out their own decayed teeth. And it's the most horrifying thing. They showed pictures of a guy who just fucked up his entire mouth. And it's like, yeah, that's a pretty failed state. That's like the stuff you see in like a war zone in Africa or something.
We grew up in Arkansas, which is one of the poorest states in the U.S., and I mean, we would go through those communities, and I mean, it was poor. I mean, we had instances of like worse tuberculosis than, what would be considered third world countries. And, like you were saying, the dental, like, let alone the dental, I mean, just the amount of poverty in some areas in Arkansas was horrifying. And you would go through these places and you're like, this is America still? This is the United States of America, the most powerful nation,
country,
in modern history. And that was really, I tell you what, I think there's a couple of different ways you can go when you grow up in the South, and it radicalized me. It really radicalized me, and that it was like, whatever we're doing is wrong. And the people in power in the United States are hurting the vast majority of Americans. I don't care if you're right. I don't care if you're left. It's a 10% shitting on the rest of the 90%. And like you, I think, Chris, you were saying before, I mean, just gobbling up all the resources, right? And they're dragons. They're dragons sitting on a pit of money, and they don't want to, we were talking about this on other pod is, at least in like the 1800s and early 1900s, the oligarchs would give some marginal benefit to the populace, right? They would build libraries, they would build music halls, they would build almshouses and things like that. And we can't even get that out of our oligarchs anymore.
Religion does just at least make some effort to look after people, right? The new religion of the invisible free hand of the economy, it masquerades as this meritocracy.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like,
exactly.
No, but this is what you need, where the cream rises. We were talking about firms just a bit ago, and we all know the inefficiencies of these systems, right? The middle manager parasites who don't add any value to the system whatsoever. In fact, do the opposite. They push people smarter than them below them out because they're a threat to their status quo.
Yes.
Squatting over the whole system. Right?
There's actually an amazing thing to kind of bring it back to economics, that economists realized the problem about 100 years ago, that if the free market is so great and all, why aren't firms inside of themselves like a market economy? So for example, when you come to Walmart, for example, within Walmart, there's no free market. It's all organized top down. And there's one guy in charge telling where everything has to go. And that dude is in charge of like 2 million people or something.
Oh, yeah.
And even the idea in there that like, oh yeah, you have to buy something from the marketing department of Walmart or something is ridiculous. But it's actually, I think it's a US company, Sears. I suppose you guys know.
Yeah, Sears. Yeah, absolutely.
They failed by now. And the reason they failed is because the founder was this crazy libertarian idiot who actually tried to create an internal market inside of Sears. So basically what they did was that the sales department of Sears, they had to buy marketing from the marketing department. So they had like a market inside of Sears, and the result was devastating. Nothing worked anymore. Everybody cheated each other. Just everything fell apart really, really fast.
Lloyd's Bank has a similar model. Okay, and it's they believe in the free market, and so they buy products internally off one another. But I'm fortunate enough to actually know some people who, although they're not senior management, they're consultants to senior management, so they know what's going on behind doors. And what they end up with is a very Stalinist system where everyone just agrees to buy a certain quota off each other consistently. That's what ends up emerging, right? You end up with a black market. Anytime you set these silly rules on people, either, as with Sears, they go for American vulture, aggressive, fight to the death capitalism, race to the bottom, or you end up with this sort of like Stalinistic, okay, like I'll buy 20,000 units off you, and then next quarter you buy 15,000 units off me.
But this is really the big problem in economics, that they realize like, oh shit, within firms, there's no free market whatsoever. So our entire theory only applies to like this very surface level. Once you go like a tiny bit inside of a firm, it just falls apart entirely. The entire edifice is just, nobody cares. It's actually amazing.
And they don't really care. They don't even believe their own bullshit. Like, what World War II comes around, right? There was not a bunch of countries being like, but can we afford this big push? Spreadsheet says no. Sorry, boys. Like, it all goes out the window when it's time to actually care about something, right?
Yeah, I mean, look
at out the window and like, shit, like, cost doesn't matter, borrow money.
Yeah.
Get what needs to do, cooperate, work together. Like, they don't actually believe in any of it. They just pretend to. So as you say, it's making them rich at the moment.
Yeah. And I mean, the Fed here in the States, you know, we've had this massive corporate debt bubble where all these companies were completely over leveraged, and then COVID hits and the entire economy is about to collapse. So what does the Fed do? It's just buying trillions and trillions of dollars of corporate debt and just absorbing it onto their balance sheet and being like, oh, well, that just went nowhere. And it makes no sense.
The stock market's still going up, right?
Booming.
Still.
Booming.
Still.
I mean, if that doesn't tell you the world is out to end.
None of it makes any sense. And even like the 2% inflation rate that the Fed says that it's always targeting, that's a made up number. And if you listen to the interviews of the people who were in the room back in the day, and you say like, well, why'd you pick 2%? Why not 1.7? Why not 2.5? And they're like, oh, we just had to pretend like we had something. And as long as everyone believes it, then it works. And then now the Fed just threw it out the door and said, well, 2% doesn't actually matter. If it's 3 or 4%, who cares?
It shocks me because when you read history and you read about the Great Depression or the build up to World War I, and you're like, oh my God, these guys are so dumb. How did they not see this coming? And you're like, we are living in those times. Yeah. Everyone who's paying attention is like, am I not getting something?
Yeah.
That seems like the dumbest thing in the world. When the last recession happened, right? And look, Barack Obama was an easy man to love, right? Very charming, like loved everything.
Folksy,
he said, every speech
he going.
He gave. He was cool, right? But then like the recession happens and you're like, oh yeah, well, what are we going to do now? It's time to clear up, right? And the first thing you do is like, we're going to appoint Goldman Sachs, who are one of the major players responsible for this whole thing. We're going to give them control of the US Treasury. And like, sorry, is this...
well, Chris, they're the only ones that understand what's going on, right?
They're too big to fail, so we're going to make them bigger.
Yeah.
That's the solution.
Yeah.
No one else gets it. Instead of 7 banks that are too big to fail, now we have 4 banks that are too big to fail.
Well, and listen, I'm a senator and I need a job when I leave office. So Goldman gives a pretty good investment gig. So,
oh, that revolving door is creepy as fuck. It looks very much like an African dictatorship now. It was most troubling watching the Republican convention, right? Mm-hmm. And it was just half of Trump's family. And I was like,
oh, yeah.
And I got to be honest, I am such a skeptic of governments that I didn't hate Trump that much. And I actually made quite a lot of money betting on him to win early on. Well, during the Republican primaries, I was like, oh my God, he's going to have it. And, I understand the arguments against Hillary Clinton. Like, she is bought and paid for by Lockheed Martin. I'm pretty sure World War III would have kicked off already had she won the election. And I really, hoped against hope that Trump would actually drain some of the swamp. Instead, he's just populated it with his weird incestuous inbred family. So good luck with that.
I mean, the talk is already that it's going to be Trump's for the next 20 or 30 years.
Yes. You have all of his kids speaking at the RNC. You have all of his kids, like wives and girlfriends who have, 15-minute slots at the RNC. And then you have Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, who's basically running the government. Did you know
about his shitty landlord's Slumdog Millionaire? Have you seen that documentary?
No, I haven't.
No.
Oh God, Jared Kushner made his money just driving people out of houses in New York, very much how like the Yakuza did during the boom back in the day. And just unbelievably unethical practices, finding the poorest people fees they weren't meant to be paid. He's a God, yes, he's a terrible person, but it's he solved speeding tickets at NASCAR right now, isn't it?
Yeah, but he solved the Israeli-Palestinian tension by reading a bunch of books and not talking to a single Palestinian. So there we go.
Yeah, I was going to say solved.
I read 40 books on it. Was his response to not having any experience in the region?
Jared Kushner solved Middle East peace. No one else could. No one else could.
You know meritocracy is bullshit in America. Donald Trump should not have any money because he is a terrible businessman, but he was born into it. And like Jared Kushner, he just fails upwards.
I mean, Donald Trump is really successful with the mafia, I suppose. Like there's one exact specific skill that he's really good at being corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
I guess for what it's worth, that's like what he's good at. And like basically what he does is money laundering for like Russians who invest into his bullshit casinos or hotels. And I guess as far as skills go, that's one skill to get rich on.
But what I love about Donald Trump, he says it. This is why they hate him so much, because he gives the game away. The things he says is actually how it's played. So the famous quote from Donald Trump is like, I don't know if it's from him, but he epitomizes it. But if you owe the bank $10,000, that's your problem. If you owe the bank $10 million, that's the bank's problem.
Right.
So every time Donald Trump's nearly gone bankrupt, he's just borrowed so much that the bank has brought in their consultants and been like, fuck, all right, let's run this guy's business for him.
He borrows money from the same bank to pay off his debt to the other side of the bank. And they do it
because they need the money. So they're like, all right. And then he just gets a free CEO for 6 months.
Yeah. That's why Deutsche is the only one that'll lend to him at this point.
He lost money running casinos. A casino is literally a license to print money. How do you do that? It's amazing.
Amazing. But, one of the other famous Trump quotations was about him. He's like, you can't buy and pay me. I buy and pay everyone else. Right. And so he was just talking about, he's like, yeah, I've given money to that Democrat and I got meetings because of it. I gave money to that Republican and I got meetings because of it. They do what I tell them because I give them money.
I'm the corruptor, therefore not the corrupted.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or, the fact that we all know he doesn't pay any income taxes because he's just like absorbing his debts when he needs to and then inflates his book when he needs to.
Smart. That's smart, though.
That's what he said. I'm my own business and I was working for myself, but now I'm working for America. So imagine what I can do. I'm like, no, you're still cheating us. You're still working for yourself.
I mean, that's like half the economy, to be fair.
That's true.
That's true.
That's like literally everybody over like 5 million, they didn't pay any taxes for a really long time.
Yeah.
And it's horrifying. Although I would counter argue that I don't think Donald Trump's children are going to be relevant. They're going to be like the Kennedys. There's like one or two charismatic dumb guys, and then just peters out. Now it's like Kennedy the third or whatever, like this random ginger dude that nobody cares about.
Yeah.
And
I mean, to be fair to the Kennedys, a lot of them got killed. They could have gone on to be more successful had they not all died horrifically.
I mean, this might be controversial, but almost thank God Kennedy got killed. Let me explain.
This is controversial. Let's lean into it.
This is controversial.
JFK? Joe Kennedy. No. The closest humanity ever got to nuclear annihilation was because of Joe Kennedy, the president one, JFK.
Yeah.
Because literally what he did was like, oh yeah, like the Russians are in Cuba, let's literally put nuclear Armageddon right at their doorstep. And there's like books came out.
That's strong leadership right there.
America, that's rock and roll, dude. That's how we do it.
What actually happened there was that in Cuba, you had two forces. You had the Cuban forces and the Russian forces. And those two were not aligned in any meaningful way. So what the Cubans did was attacking the US because fuck the US. But the Russians were like, oh my God, don't do this, you fucking idiots, you're going to kill us all. And at some point, there was a Russian, so like the US was basically assuming that they were under attack by the Russians, but they were actually attacked by the Cubans. So at some point, the closest humanity got to nuclear war was in this Russian submarine. They were close to being attacked by the US submarine. And they were like, yeah, let's launch the nukes. Fuck it, they're attacking us. It's World War III. And only because some Russian dude in there was like, yeah, no, let's not do that.
Oh, yeah, he got sent the launch code, right? And was like,
yeah, I'm not doing it. And that's like the only reason all of us are still alive, because this one Russian dude was like, yeah, no, let's not do that. And then like on, there's like some account that in Moscow, the entire Russian leadership was like, fuck, let's get to the car, let's talk to the US. Oh my God, fuck. They were like terrified. These guys were like actual, like the Russian leadership was complete assholes, but they realized they would all die if they were doing this. So they were like going immediately panicking towards like the closest transmission thing towards the US. They were like, oh my God, Kennedy, please don't do this. Oh my God, just peace, whatever. And Kennedy was like, nah, fuck it. Let's just go harder on them. And he was just this like insane person that like, oh yeah, like this is, if I push on
man,
this,
if you were banging Marilyn Monroe, you'd have the confidence to bomb the Russians. You'd be like, dude, I know what the fuck I want, yo.
I got this. Come on.
No, but just imagine like this insane guy was like, oh yeah, we have like weapons capable enough to destroy the entire world. And it's like, yeah, let's go aggressive. That's the way to go.
Nothing has changed since that time. Everyone still has nukes pointing at each other. And I literally think the only reason America didn't go to war with Iran earlier this year was because Donald Trump doesn't have a coherent strategy other than let's talk about Donald Trump and how great Donald Trump is.
Right.
I honestly think Hillary Clinton, given the chance and a sponsored war deal, would have gone for that. That would have been just the carrot she needed for another intervention in the Middle East.
But hard to tell.
She may have been. Well, I think the other big reason why we haven't gone to war with Iran yet, because after the assassination of Soleimani, and Iran did their strike on the base of American soldiers in Iraq, they gave Iraq a heads up. They didn't actually want American soldiers to be killed in large numbers because they knew what would happen afterwards. So they sent the information over and said, hey, we're going to strike at this time. Everyone was already in their bunkers. They hit them. They saved face, and we didn't go into.
This is a proxy war for propaganda, right? Both sides,
right?
Show video footage of the missiles going off. Go, yeah, we're badasses.
Yeah,
and they win the next election.
And then poor fucking Canadians get caught up, and they shoot down one of their airliners. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I was surprised. I would have bet against humanity, and I thought that would be the
yeah, it's actually really surprising that we didn't destroy ourselves yet.
I think the only blessing you had there is that America had accidentally shot down an Iranian airliner a couple of decades ago, so they were like, okay, we'll call it even.
It's that just washed. We were waiting for it to wash. It washed.
Too soon? Sorry.
I always think that it's going to be one of these smaller proxy wars that do bring the US and the UK into some kind of world war. I've been particularly worried about what's going on in the Caucasus between Azerbaijan and, Armenia. And that's been worrisome because you got, some Turkish influence there. You got some Russian influence there. You got some... the Middle East has a couple of groups there, and next thing you know, it's like everyone's shooting at each other.
Have you ever played board game Risk?
Yeah, I actually, my favorite is Axis and Allies, where it's like Risk on crack. But yeah.
Okay, well, I haven't tried crack yet either, but I would try that board
also
game.
Delicious, yeah.
But you see that like China, for example, is just taking a territory per turn, taking its card, and that
right
now, and that's how you play the game. If you try and capture North America in your first turn, you're going to have a bad time. Everyone's going to gang up against you, and
right.
If you look at what's happening. It is this proxy war state. It's hard to lament the decline of America as the world police. Fuck yeah. But unfortunately, like as bad as it was when they were doing that, you kind of see what happens when they're not. Someone is going to step into that vacuum. And so you have Russia took Crimea and no one did anything. And this is what frustrates me so much is that if these guys actually practice what they preach, the whole idea of NATO is meant to be for security. But when something like that actually kicks off, nothing happens. Because what it really comes down to is it's just a complicit deal of everyone has to give 10% of their GDP to Lockheed Martin. That's what it's really about. No one gives a fuck about world safety. They just want Lockheed Martin lobbyists have made it so everyone has to buy 10%, and so they're forever growing. Is that too cynical?
No, I don't think so at all. I always get so torn between these kind of regional groups. Are they effective to, especially with like trade agreements, right? It's who is the trade agreement for? Well, a lot of our trade agreements are for and created by corporations, by, politicians who want to stay in power for decades. And you start looking at what goes into a trade treaty, and you're like, wow, so you didn't have workers present, you didn't have service employees present, you didn't have middle managers present or anybody like that. And the next thing you know, their interests have been completely sidestepped, not even mentioned. I would like a trade treaty that was worker centric, right? That was employee centric. That was like, how can we best achieve some kind of buildup of the lower classes? Am I ever going to get that trade treaty? No. So I generally hate all trade treaties.
You know who's doing it though, and you know why you guys will lose. It's China.
Right.
So America has fallen for its own propaganda and believes that the free market will look after its people.
Right.
It's going great so far.
And corporate interests can just run free, and it'll probably all work out in the wash, honest, and won't just make a bunch of shareholders fucking rich at the expense of everything else. China, there's this beautiful theory which says that no one won the Cold War, right? Russia and China adopted corporatism, and America adopted the police state and the surveillance state. And that's what happened, just ideas were exchanged. Really. Yeah. So the difference is that China and Russia, their governments have the power to tell these corporations, okay, here's the plan. Whereas America, that's not how things are run. I don't think anyone believes that the swamp has been drained, right?
No, not at all.
And when China does a deal in Africa, right, they will go in and they will say, okay, we're going to give aid. What we're going to do is build an airport and a pier and a highway. And we're going to make most of the profit from that for the next 40 decades. And, when America does it, a corporation gets rich. And it doesn't really give jobs to anyone, and it doesn't really benefit anyone other than their profit margin that year. That's it.
Yeah, the Silk Road 2.0 really is a incredible achievement as far as international relations go. It's incredible. I mean, they really have spread out their tentacles into the whole entire world.
And they've copied America.
Right.
This used to be America. Look at the Marshall Plan. Look at post-World War II Europe.
100%.
America going, we want soft power and hard power. We want all the power. And they had it for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, there's not enough profit in that.
Well, and we can't even invest in our own country, let alone other countries. I mean, the way we invest in other countries is bombing them. Like that's how we invest.
Well, and Christian, I know you made reference to the the dental nonprofits in America. I mean, there are so many of these stories of nonprofits that are focused on Latin America or Africa, and then they hear these stories about rural communities in America, and they're like, "Oh no, wait, the problem is actually worse in the States." So it's just our civilization itself has just been rotting from the inside since World War II. That was the one thing that we got. We did that shit, and we've been just coasting, and we're now just a hollow tree that's falling over.
That's pretty much the entire Western world, to be honest, though. Like, I know a statistic a while ago that in the center of Scotland, life expectancy is worse than in Palestine right now, and it's insane. Yeah, like because in like the center of Glasgow, it's so poor, and just because it's so poor, they all just have to cope and take drugs. As a consequence, just everything falls apart. But I guess if you scale this up to an entire country, you have the US. And I'm not sure if you read it, but there was actually like one of the few good economics articles that is called The Death of Despair. And it talks about how among like poor male Americans, white males, that life expectancy is decreasing because they're just all miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Like they all just die of like either taking too many weird drugs, they commit suicide, they drink themselves to death. And it's just the entire society just falling apart in such a miserable way that, they just die of misery. And it's horrifying.
Yeah, because they're all failures, right? I mean, look at their grandparents. Their grandfather, and specifically white Americans, their grandfather was able to have a job at the factory and support a wife and 2 kids all by himself.
Probably a union job, probably had benefits and a pension.
Yeah, and he is now broke as shit, can't afford anything, can't afford to take care of his kid. And there's nothing that he can do, and society tells him it's his fault. He's the failure. If you were good, or if you were productive, or if you were any sort of decent human being, then you should be making more money, because that's how economics works, right? The hardworking, smart, you get paid, and he's not, and everyone's just miserable and in poverty. And we've been taught to blame ourselves, and we just internalize it.
And then the Democrat Party comes along and says, "You're a basket of racist deplorables."
Exactly.
And nothing will ever change.
Right?
Yeah.
Trump is not the problem. Trump is a symptom of the disease. I completely sympathize with a bunch of people who are turned off by politics, by government, by the corruption, and they went with a strong man. That story is happening across the world. So, but democracy, the illusion of democracy we've been sold, we no longer buy. We no longer believe that ad campaign. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it similar with the Brexit conversations we're having in the UK. If you're from Glasgow, if you're from a poor part of Wales, if you're from the northeast of England, and they tell you, "Oh no, don't vote for Brexit, that'll be bad for the economy." I'm not surprised that people went, "I don't give a fuck about your economy. It's not my economy. It's not serving me. Fuck you very much." And everyone's like, "Oh, they're such racist idiots." You're like, no, they had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
They don't care if the city of London does 2% better this year. They don't give a fuck.
Yeah, doesn't help them at all.
Yeah. Well, it's
and
not even
shouting "you're all racist idiots" surprisingly wasn't the convincing marketing campaign the Remainers thought it would be.
It's interesting how it rarely works. I don't think I've seen it work yet. Racist,
"You're a
idiot,
racist idiot,
deplorable.
please vote with me."
Yeah.
It's not even just you're a racist idiot now. It's because now you get into the left-wing cancel culture, right? And you're not even worth talking to. And anyone who thinks like you, we eviscerate and destroy. Yeah. And there's this divide of, Trump is able to talk to these people, and he here in the States was able to actually, tap into that vein of frustration and anger and really just depression at the state of life in America. And meanwhile, the Democrats can't even communicate with them because they're not worth communicating with. It's not just, I'm calling you racist. It's I'm cutting you off entirely because you're not a person worth speaking to.
I mean, even then the people they are talking to, they're like, yeah, nothing's ever going to change. It's like, oh yeah, if you're like a suburban person, then it's like, oh yeah, we'll make sure the police is working. But for everybody else, it's like, yeah, that's your lot in life. Good luck. That's pretty much all you get. Although I can kind of, let's say, sympathize with you guys in the US, because I grew up in a really poor part of Northeast Germany. And I guess the best way to describe this federal state is that they actually elected Nazis into parliament for quite a long time. So it's like not even...
Sorry?
So the name is very long in German, so I don't think it makes any sense pronouncing it. But it's pretty much a combination of Florida and Alabama. So if you come to the coast, it's kind of rich. But if you come, it's actually really like it's uncanny that if you come to the coast, there's like some rich little settlements that are insanely wealthy. But if you go further inland, all of a sudden it's just poor people everywhere in tiny villages in buttfuck nowhere nobody cares about. And as a consequence, like these guys, they had kind of decent lives during the GDR because somebody took care of them. It was like some social welfare.
Right. What's the GDR, sorry?
Like East Germany.
Cool.
The communist dictatorship, basically.
Right.
And like their lives weren't great, but they had like social safety net and basically never had to worry about at least having food.
Right.
But ever since that crumbled apart, all of the state just fell into misery. And if you come to the villages, it's just ruins and abandonment. There's just nothing. And as a consequence, when there's an actual Nazi party in Germany still. They call themselves National Democratic Party.
They're not even allowed to say the word Nazi, right? In Germany, it's illegal to use the flags or the iconography. Or
the flags are legal. The name itself is not. But no Nazi calls itself a Nazi.
Right.
When you have people like Tucker Carlson, they are Nazis in all practical sense, but they don't call themselves that. So
come at me, Tucker. Bring it.
Speaking of which, I actually have.
I will fight your lawyers.
Tucker's taking some heat right now. Have y'all seen this?
No. Well, because he's coming. It's a bad time. He's been anti-BLM for decades. It's a bad time.
He's anti everything good.
Yeah.
But no, I have a theory of how the world is going to end. So my theory is that Biden is going to win, and for the next 4 years, it's nothing going to happen in the US. It's just the country is just frozen. Right. But then in 2024, it's going to be President Tucker Carlson, and then the world ends the next year.
Yeah, I think that's pretty close.
Kanye West as his vice president.
I think Tucker 2024 is a great bet.
Yeah, and that's he would be like, yeah, let's fucking nuke China and Russia. Fuck it. He would actually he's insane enough.
Yeah,
and
and he's smart too. That's been one of Donald Trump's biggest downfalls. Is he's an idiot and doesn't know how anything works.
No, but this is the world's gift. Thank God America no longer has someone at the helm. Okay, the negative is you get China and Russia, but like I say, they're playing risk. They just want one territory every 5 years.
Yeah.
America was going to start World War III.
Yeah.
No, but that's the big fear, right? Is Donald Trump is just a bull in a china shop. He doesn't know how a bureaucracy works. People are just rotating in and out of his administration like crazy, to the point where, we were just talking about this, the military audit that was supposed to take, 1 year ended up taking 4 years, because they keep changing heads of departments so often that no one knows where anything is. And now we have all this missing money inside of the military, because it's just shit, where'd it go? I don't know. 10 people got fired between spending that and now.
But this isn't news though. 4 years ago, they found, I think, nearly $1 trillion missing off this country, right?
Which is really doing that.
Serious money.
Yeah. It's just what happens when someone knows how to pull the levers of government in the United States and they're actually as insane as Trump is?
I think my problem with someone listening to this, and I've done a few of these podcasts now, is that people assume I'm hardcore communist, and I'm not. I'm still not convinced. I still feel like I'm a capitalist. I just don't feel like this is what the promise of capitalism was. I think the expression communism is great in theory, but it doesn't work in practice. I think it's the same with libertarian free market capitalism. It's a great theory. I just don't see it working. And what I see we actually have is pretty corporate Stalinism. It's that. I don't think there's a big difference between Putin and all his oligarch friends running the shit show over there and a bunch of American corporations with the illusion of competition.
Well, I call it state capitalism, because we pick winners and losers in America. You can get fat government, paychecks if you know the right people, right? You won't pay taxes if you know the right people and pay the right people off. And so what we've done in the States is some kind of legalized bribery. What this has done is create a system that it's all about the bribery and what that bribery leads to.
It's called lobbying, right?
Lobbying.
So if it's done in Africa, it's corruption. If it's done in the West, it's lobbying.
No, it's cool then, yeah.
Yeah. And this is a problem. This is a huge problem.
If you buy off a policeman, it's corruption. If you buy off a judge, it's connections. And we go to the same country club.
And I don't think that's capitalism. I don't think that's what Adam Smith was talking about when he wrote The Wealth of Nations. He didn't have this idea of, if you have the capital to pay people off to do illegal shit, then it's all good. I don't think anyone thought that.
Adam Smith actually talked about what you just said.
Oh, he did?
Like the second most famous quote by Adam Smith is that two entrepreneurs basically only meet in private to conspire against the public. That's like his second most public quote, like most famous quote. He's like, Adam Smith had nothing to do with the capitalist system. He came way before it, and that's the thing about.
I will let you, Christian. I'll let you get into it. I'll just quickly say that Adam Smith is quoted in America like the Messiah. Right? Yeah. Like he's one of the founding fathers. And we'll get into your creation myth that you guys have got going on there. But that's what you need to understand, Christian, is that when Adam Smith is quoted, it's like 420 years ago when America was becoming the greatest nation ever, Adam Smith spoke with 10 commandments he brought from up high from the mountain and spoke.
Yeah, no, I do get it. That he's like, there's this one Adam Smith quote that businessmen only meet to basically fuck over the public. And there's another Adam Smith quote that if people only work in like this menial job that doesn't pay anything and is really boring, you destroy their minds. And he literally called them, it makes people poor and stupid, or like something along those lines.
Yeah, because I've heard Adam Smith misquoted, and he was like, you know what's really efficient? If people just work on one thing. And they're just a cog in the machine.
Yeah, I mean,
they just pump stamps. But how he opened the sentence, and he ends it with, unfortunately, that's a terrible soul-destroying job that no one should ever have to do.
That's the basic idea. Kind of makes sense that you kind of focus on one particular thing, because what Adam Smith came from is that everybody is a farmer, and you build a house for a little bit, you farm a little bit, you just produce some grain for a little bit, and then when Adam Smith was alive, was like that. Oh, now we start to have some small-scale factories, and then there it makes sense. Like, yeah, you focus on this part, you focus on this part, and this makes sense. But he was absolutely aware, if you push this too far and you have like a guy at a conveyor belt for 12 hours every single day, you are destroying that guy and make his life miserable. And Adam Smith is
making iPhones in China, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. And Adam Smith, like, he's not this one unitary guy. Like, he's not this libertarian guy, but he's also not this, like, think of Adam Smith. He didn't know capitalism as we know it today. He lived before that, like a century before any of that happened. So he came from, feudalism came before me. This is what he was still alive. And he was like, obviously capitalism is superior to feudalism because now we don't have kings anymore that murder and steal at every single turn. So for him, it made sense to support the free market. But he was fully aware of all the problems.
But people quote Adam Smith to justify the new feudalism. That's what's so fucked up.
Yeah. But you could perfectly make a case that Adam Smith was basically a socialist. It's perfectly like, he was very much like, the business guys or the merchant, they are totally out there to fuck over everybody. And they are just like the guys that have the means of production and they use them to expropriate value.
This is my problem though. Compared to the modern ruling class, we're all socialists. Like, I try and explain to people, I'm very capitalist. I would love to have a meritocracy. I just don't think you get the best out of people when they're starving, have no access to healthcare.
Wait, why
they have a bad month, then they fall off the thing and they fall into debt and become debt slaves. Like, I would love, like, there's that quote, Stephen Gould, who cares about the size of Einstein's brain? There's probably been a bunch of people who've been resigned to working in a cotton field that were geniuses. It was just never tapped into because they were just in abject poverty. And I would love for the capitalist propaganda to be real. Like, if we really could, everyone could be worth what they contributed to society.
I very much disagree that you conflate capitalism with meritocracy, because I would very much disagree.
Well, no, but that's the vision they sell. That's the promise they sell, right? You're absolutely right.
The dogma, right? The religious dogma is that, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's the one we get in the States. And it's like, well, you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? And so...
What if you don't have boots,
The quote was literally made to parody this kind of attitude.
Right.
Like, it's intentional, like, this is literally impossible. You can't do it.
The parody has become...
It's literally that it used to be a parody. Like, Monopoly also used to be a parody of capitalism.
Right.
And it became this thing of like, it's this capitalism game, but it was designed to parody the system. It's bizarre.
But no, now it teaches your kids, like, how to be a good capitalist, you learn
like,
from it.
Fuck over everyone.
Yeah, that's how you win at business.
Quick tip, the free parking rule is what destroys Monopoly. Monopoly only works as a game when there's not enough money. But everyone does the homebrew rule of if you land on free parking, you collect everyone's taxes. There's a reason why government doesn't hand out taxes like that. It ruins the game of Monopoly.
Wrecks
it's
everything.
Not allowed to be played.
Yes.
Just so you know. But the game is meant to be short, sharp, and if your family argued over a game of Monopoly, it's not your fault. It's not a poor reflection of your family.
Everybody argues over it.
Miserable.
It just makes everybody hate each other.
Everyone. Yes.
That's very up for capitalism. Makes you hate everybody else.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Grandma.
That's why you have to play Settlers of Catan, man. It's
there
so
is a metaphor
peaceful.
there, though, with the housing market, right?
Yeah.
And the boomers.
Oh, yeah. But I think when we had the emails before, and he wanted like a foreigner's perspective on the US.
Oh, yeah.
There was one thought I had. There's a book that came out, I think earlier this year. It's called The Jakarta Method.
Yes, we went into it.
Yeah. But this is what the US feels like right now. They talk more and more about that. Oh, the socialists and Antifa and Bernie Sanders, they're trying to slowly take over and have like... So I guess just to explain it for people who haven't heard about it. In Jakarta, until the 1970s, they had legit the third largest communist party in the world. And they had a really good chance to winning the elections and running the country. And what basically happened was that the leadership, supported by the CIA, obviously, basically accused them of starting a coup against the Jakartan government, or the Indonesian government. And as a consequence, it was murdered literally everybody that was associated with the party. So they killed about 1 million people, and nobody really knows how many died. And this was preceded by like a long campaign of trying to demonize the socialists and trying to really put down of like anybody opposing the system really wants to just kill people. And they did kind of the same formula in South America. So with Allende in Chile, kind of the same thing. And I really feel like
I mean, you can see it now with the propaganda against Venezuela or Iran or...
I was going to say Egypt too, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this is where the US feels like it's going. That at some point we have like, oh yeah, let's just run with the military and the police and some white militia guys around, and let's just murder everybody that's associated with Bernie Sanders. That's that feels like where it's going.
Well, I've been talking about this for a while, how I'm going to end up in a gulag, because like the way that
no,
things are,
you're so white, you're so pretty.
I just have to pretend.
Oh yeah, I mean, we had just like in the US, I think yesterday was like this random white 17-year-old asshole like running with an assault rifle and shooting at random protesters, and the police was happy to have him there. They were like, "Here's some water, just join us." And
he was a part of the Boogaloo Boys, which is like an alt-right militia group throughout the US.
Growing up, right? It's no longer a joke.
Yeah.
Well, and then guess what? Tucker Carlson defends him after he murders 2 people and severely injures another. And he's on TV saying, well, what do you expect? All these leftist radicals are destroying cities. So naturally, a 17-year-old with an M16 assault rifle has to drive from Illinois to Wisconsin to shoot
his
people.
Definition of order, right? It's like, oh, we need order, though. You're like, that's your order?
Yeah. But this blatant difference that, like, if you're a black guy and you go into your car, there's a guy shooting at you 7 times in your back. If you are a random 7-year-old kid with an assault rifle shooting 2 people, the police ignores you.
Yeah.
That's just bizarre.
Here's what horrifies me as an American, and talking about that tribalism a little bit and how it is religious fervor on both sides now. There's enough here in this little microcosm in some, small city in Wisconsin that everyone on both sides can get energized, right? There's the Second Amendment people being like, oh yeah, we have to protect ourselves and protect our storefronts and protect our houses and neighborhoods. And, we have the right to shoot people. And then you have, the Black Lives Matter woke left being like, they killed or they shot a guy in the back 7 times. And like, you have crazy boogaloo people, working with the police. That is a recipe for a very dangerous confrontation that is coming in the States. Very dangerous. I mean, it is kind of the what was it? The bloody Kansas.
Tulsa.
No.
you guys have had so many horrific massacres. You can't
Yeah,
remember
he
which
was
one's quote, right?
John Brown.
Yeah.
John Brown,
Oh, yeah.
the abolitionist.
Yeah, I don't even know which one you're talking about. There's
yeah.
so many.
There's so many. No, John Brown, the abolitionist,
Yeah.
pre-Civil War in Kansas, you know, and that is the spark that lights the Civil War. I mean, is this the spark that leads to some? I mean, we got 2020 coming up. If Trump loses or if Trump wins, there's going to be an explosion of anger on either of these religious fervent sides.
Well, and number one on that too, it's not even, you know, just if Trump loses, but if he loses, he's already setting the stage for contesting the election and saying that, you know, we're not going to be able to trust these results. So what's that going to bring? But the thing that this always reminds me of, especially after the shooting in Wisconsin by the white militiaman, was, I mean, we've seen all of this before. In the 1920s, the police departments were terrified of all the black people that were moving into their cities. So they partnered with the KKK. And the KKK were basically deputized as vigilantes to go out there and lynch black people. I mean, in Portland, it was literally an official partnership with the Ku Klux Klan and with these white radicals. And we're just seeing it again, where in Wisconsin, the police are being chummy. And there's videos of them giving this kid with an M16 water and saying, hey, you're doing great. Thanks for coming. And then later this kid shoots a bunch of people. Like, we haven't changed in 150 years.
Any good news to talk about? You guys are killing my buzz right now. This is the
Okay, so I'm actually wondering that I don't think there's going to be a civil war in the US for the simple reason that basically whatever the side the military is on, that side is going to win.
Right.
Like a billion miles, because they have all, like literally all the like weaponry in the world. So you might have like 10 million, let's say, left-leaning, even if they're organized to some degree, you have 2 million armed soldiers with tanks and airplanes and bombs. There's just not going to be any civil war. That's just one side outmatching the other by just such an insane margin that I just don't feel like there's going to be any chance for a civil war.
Well, what worries me though, Christian, is that now there is a very strong contingent within the U.S. military that is that kind of neoliberal old guard, you know, still believes George Washington is, you know, the third Jesus Christ, you know what I mean? Like, just that kind of military person exists, but there's a whole lot less of them now under the Trump presidency. I mean, they have slowly been taking out a lot of these old guard military, you know, been in the military for 40 years. And so what happens when you do have a serious contingent of these, you know, are they Boogaloo Boys or alt-righters or anything like that? Well, maybe it's nothing so strong, but there is a contingent within the U.S. military that loves Donald Trump. And what happens when you do have enough of these commanders that will, you know, listen to Trump and not listen to, you know, the Joe Biden presidency? I mean, that's what happened in the first American Civil War. It was, you literally had military people leaving, you know, West Point and leaving the bases or taking over bases throughout the South.
The thing I always wonder about too is that if there is a contingent that tries to start a legitimate uprising in the United States, what country is going to start giving us arms? Like, I mean, look at Libya in Haftar versus Tripoli and how every nation is just funneling weapons on each side. So, like, is China going to drop a leftist contingent in the United States, a couple drones, and we see what happens? I mean, it'll lead to the U.S. completely imploding on itself, which would be an interesting sight.
Oh, that would be fun. Sorry. Showed my hand a little bit there. But yeah. No, that's what happens, right? Like if Russia starts just dropping off crates of weapons, if they upgrade their game from sponsoring Twitter ads
to actually funding military assault on the establishment.
This is my problem though. I don't believe Antifa is a credible threat.
No,
like for
it's
me it's
real.
laughable.
No,
like
it's not real.
The idea that a bunch of 19-year-old middle class college kids are going to start arming on the right. well, a kid last night showed that he's actually capable.
Yeah.
But
they're cosplaying. They're cosplaying as revolutionaries.
But that is what I said about the Republic of Kekistan and the 4chan trolls. And the tragic thing is that if you grow up in a farm, you probably can shoot a gun.
Right. And you have access to them. These Antifa kids have probably never actually held a gun, let alone been in close proximity
Sorry,
to a gun.
I'm back?
You're back.
Yes. I have no idea what this is. I'm really sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
You've got your sound working. What really stresses me out is when it's possible to 3D print a drone that's capable of shooting someone.
Right.
Then shit's gonna get fucked up.
Yeah.
No, that's how ISIS was able to have such a decentralized manufacturing economy, was because they downloaded all of these schematics for building weaponry and for 3D printing things that they needed. So no matter where they were, they could start building the same materials that they would need to fix their gun, because they have gun and they have all the parts for it they can print out at any factory. So like, as 3D printing continues, and you can now 3D print metal for $200, I'm about to buy one. You can just make all this shit yourself in your own home.
You're about to buy a metal 3D printer.
Well, a 3D printer, but it can also print metal. So they can pretty much do anything you want now.
Is this for the Civil War or for any other purpose?
Is this paid by the Russians, Paul?
Listen, don't. I told you.
Sponsored by Russia.
I don't talk about my relationship with Uncle Putin, okay? He's a family friend. It's fine.
I think you're overstating the whole 3D printing thing a tiny bit. Like, ISIS, they basically
example of exaggeration we've used so far. So.
Well, no, it's definitely an exaggeration, but
no, but like, I think the whole 3D printing thing, like, it doesn't do that much. Like, you can 3D print a drone or a gun, but what does that do compared to a whole factory that produces like 50 tanks a day? It's just disproportionately greater.
Mm-hmm.
No, the American military industrial complex will win, but it will kick off a massive shit show that's very hard to vote your way out of, and it's very hard to see.
But even for ISIS,
I can't imagine the next election being a bunch of 75-year-olds saying kind
words. An amazing thing for
once
ISIS.
Drones are shooting and tanks are rolling over towns.
I know, for some strange reason, they managed to get a ton of Toyotas to get around. And I think for most of the time, they relied on just old Russian weapons.
Your mic is fucked, man. I'm telling you. I don't know whether it's ISIS or the American military-industrial complex.
This one's still Bezos. Bezos.
Just fucking with you, Christian. Just trying to destroy your microphone right now. Which was a shame, because you were saying something positive, that the world might not end with another American civil war.
Yeah, we needed someone to brighten this day, but...
So, I mean, it doesn't seem like it today, but if you compare it to 100 years ago, so think of 100 years ago, we had kind of a similar thing. We had Eugene Debs, basically the Bernie Sanders of his time. He was thrown to jail and had to run his presidency from jail.
Right.
And, Bernie Sanders is still a free man. Like, he wasn't just thrown in jail because he opposed U.S. policy. So, progress, I guess?
Well, it's the Steven Pinker model, right? That he was kind of like, we focus on all the bad shit. Like, we focus on all the terrible things, but overall, if you compare year over year, things are typically getting better. Now, I think, Christian, you were mentioning how, recently, especially here in the U.S., we've seen a decrease in male life expectancy. That's the first time in decades, right? First time in decades, we've seen a decrease in life expectancy.
Like, I totally understand. Like, I'm not making a Steven Pinker argument whatsoever. Like, Steven Pinker is a complete idiot. Don't get me wrong.
Well, Steven Pinker's position is simple. You've seen the Lego movie, right? Everything is awesome.
No, but it's, let's say, at least in terms of, I mean, I guess one good example is free speech. that it took the left basically a century to fight for actual free speech. And what happened throughout the entire 19th and early 20th century was you oppose US foreign policy, or basically any US policy.
What I'll say about the left, when they fail, is when they get serious and earnest and witch hunty, right? Like no one likes that, turns everyone off. When the left wins is when they use humor. And I don't know, maybe this is just...
What? The left wins when they organize. That's basically what they do.
Yeah, but...
Like, you can make all these cultural arguments that the left doesn't win on YouTube or on Twitter. The left wins when they, like, Bernie-style capture the Democratic Party. That's what actually needs to happen. That, like, you need to have, like, a third party or, like, capture the Democratic Party. Nobody cares what happens on Twitter.
The only time the left is going to win is when all the boomers die. Which I think COVID was our best chance of that, unfortunately.
That's really what we're trying to do here by just like letting COVID run is take out all the boomers in America.
You guys are. For everyone that's skeptical of COVID and lockdown and masks. But this is it, the humor I'm talking about. So I had all these debates about masks and the pros and the cons. And then I just saw the meme, oh, you're a rat licker. Done. Like as soon as you can convey it in that short a meme, oh, right. So during the plague, 100 years ago, you would have been going around licking rats. Got it. I got your number. You're a rat licker. Done.
I did not see that meme in the U.S. That is a quintessential European meme. We're like, bubonic plague. What the fuck is that?
The other one, people that are climate change skeptics. I'm like, oh, you're a cool earther, which is pretty much like a flat earther, but denying more science at this point.
Yeah.
Just in terms of rights that you can have as a US citizen, they became much better. Obviously, over the last 10 years, everything starts to go to shit very slowly.
Yes.
Basically, anything that was good was like achieved by labor unions and left-wing protests. And that basically went until Reagan, who just destroyed the entire movement for a couple of decades, and now it's slowly getting steam again.
Yeah.
But like we are still starting, like the entire left is starting on a much higher level than it did 100 years ago, because 100 years ago was like basically the entire police force is insane, like people like beating down and shooting at any kind of protest.
Right.
And nowadays you can go out on the street and protest basically anything. There's a small chance you might get shot by like a random white kid or pepper sprayed by a policeman, but you have like a general chance to not die. So
even in China, they're using rubber bullets. That doesn't seem to be the case so often in the US, right?
I mean, in this last case, if you're a militia member, you probably don't even have access to rubber bullets. I think that's almost purely like police issued ammunition. Do you know, Paul?
Yeah, I know you can buy a taser. I don't believe you can buy a rubber bullet.
Or like pepper bullets, right? I think, again, that's another, like, that's only through police and any other law enforcement.
Yeah, and you can buy pepper spray, but you can't buy police-grade pepper spray. Theirs is like 10 times stronger than anything you can get on the market. But they at least are not killing people like they used to. I mean, when the police were originally formed, at least here in the States, I mean, number one, they formed out of the slave patrols, but then in the North, a big part of why they formed was to protect capital and to protect capitalists and their factories. So a big part of their purpose was busting up unions that were on strike. So, that led to a lot of deaths. And I think it was it the West Virginian coal mines? I forget where it was, somewhere in the Mid-Atlantic. There was a legitimate war between union workers trying to get more pay and the state police and the Pinkerton Agency, which, just pops up all over history to fuck shit up. And they were very well armed on both sides. And it wasn't until like the Pinkertons brought out like a machine gun that they were able to actually squash the strike. That's what I'm thinking of. Thank you.
Yeah, that was Pennsylvania.
You have the same thing at the Ford factory, and you have like mafia getting involved on the side of the police.
The Colorado silver mines. I mean, literally tens, if not hundreds, are injured and killed, are silver miners by, National Guard and American military.
And it's just scary when you do your research, right? Like the police never rock up to a company that hasn't paid its workers money that's owed.
Yeah,
but,
right.
like That's not who they're there to protect and serve.
No.
No.
I mean, that's actually an amazing thing in terms of US crime. That there was a statistic a while ago that the combined amount of all the US theft, really fast, but basically like the entirety like of officially stolen property is less than wage theft by the US. So that companies not paying enough wages or withholding wages. That is more than the entirety property theft in like all the other theft.
Yeah.
It's actually insane.
Yeah. And likewise, it's the same with
theft.
All the concern that happens about, legal immigration and the money these guys come and take in benefits, and you compare it to corporations not paying their taxes, and it's a tiny percentage.
Yep.
But funnily enough, refugees don't own any newspapers. So
Right.
that story doesn't get printed quite as often.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and then what is it when the police just take your shit?
They can arrest your property, right?
Yeah. What's the term for that?
I think
forget.
this is an American thing. I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
It sounds
Chris, you know what I'm talking about?
Well, property. It's in eminent domain.
Forfeiture and
civil asset forfeiture, which is where the police just take your things and they don't have to give it back, is like 10 times worse than what theft is. So it's just like the cops themselves are stealing more than the people they're there to keep from stealing.
The big problem I have is, like everything we've just said makes us sound like weird pinko commie socialist revolutionary assholes that we can instantly dismiss by random talking point propaganda. But what really bothers me is like you bring up these stats and you realize that they only attack the strawman version of our arguments, right? Like this is my main point with Black Lives Matter or the statement defund the police, which I get it. Like it grabs good headlines. It's intentionally objectionable. But when you look into what these people are asking for, and again and again and again, their position gets mischaracterized.
Pretty much what we're doing is entertainment. Like, it's not going to change anybody's mind. If you're already a lefty, you're going to stay a lefty. If you are a right-wing person, you're going to listen to us and think we're insane. It just doesn't really matter. So I think what actually changes things is when people organize. And I mean, this is what Bernie Sanders did incredibly well. That, like, I think a year ago, he went to like this Fox News talk show thing.
Town hall.
Asking, like,
brilliant.
Who would like to have government healthcare? Basically everybody in a Fox News thing.
And anchors on the show were like overrun.
And he was like, yes, that's how you have to do it. You have to organize, like you basically have to like just organize a...
Oh no, Christian.
We were so close.
Jesus Christ. I can fill in the gaps. It's absolutely
okay.
Ask the average person. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want your neighbor to starve to death and go into debt poverty next time one of their family members gets cancer? Who the fuck would vote for that? Other than the deepest, darkest vampire.
A lot of vampires. A lot of vampire squids.
Yes.
Oh, yes. No, this is a brilliant blog Rolling Stone wrote.
Yeah. Matt Taibbi.
Yeah.
Oh, my
God.
He's a minor deity for me, talking about our religious overtones and belief of the capitalist structure. I have a belief in Matt Taibbi.
Well, this is why I love people with a bit of knowledge of economics, because I do think a lot of the communist YouTubers, right? Like it's easy to be against capitalism when you've never had a job. It's sort of like an incel being against women.
Yeah.
You're like, who cares what you think about women? You've never seen one. Like, no one gives a fuck.
You've never touched a woman. Why am
know
I
the
listening to you?
To a man with a hammer, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So to a man with a hammer and sickle, every problem. Like communism, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's what I always say too, is like, no, what I'm saying is not extreme. Y'all are the extremists. But everyone else in the world thinks these things, and America's just lost its mind.
Yes. And if we actually had democracy, most people would be like, oh, no, we don't need to ruin someone every time someone gets sick. No one would vote for that.
Yeah.
Just so some corporation makes a bit of extra money. No one believes in that shit.
Yeah.
Except for...
It should not cause you to go bankrupt. Like, you should be able to exist as a human on Earth and get care that we have widely available without it ending your life.
And like the fire service is just the obvious analogy. It's like, oh, you know what would be good for the economy? Privatize the fire service.
Yes.
Hey.
Can't afford to keep your house from burning down? Too bad.
Well, and to that point, in the States, we've started privatizing ambulances. And so you call 911 and have to get picked up by an ambulance. You're paying just for that $400 to $500 just for the right to ride in an ambulance.
Do you know how insane that sounds to us Europeans? We're like,
it's got to be. It's got to be insane.
I have a friend who had to get airlifted out because she had a four-wheeling accident, and the helicopter had to come, and it cost her $50,000.
Holy shit!
Yeah,
I mean, you're finished at that much. That's a university education in the States.
Well, that's madness to us as well.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but 3 years of education, and look, it's not like you're doing one-on-one teaching with Socrates. Right, like you're sat in a class with 100 people. You're like, if you do the math, this shouldn't cost that much.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and Chris,
that's 100 should be affordable.
50K is in-state tuition. If you try to go out of state or private, it's 50K a year.
But this is even by UK standards. It's kind of insane. That like I came from Germany to the UK, and I studied in Scotland, where it's completely free for Europeans. But English people have to pay. Chris, how much is it for English
I don't
students?
know. Like I'm old. I paid
yeah.
University.
But basically, everybody I know in the UK, they have like 40 grand in student debt, whereas I could study for free. And in Germany, I tried to impose student fees, and I think it was some ridiculously low amount by your guys' standards. Like I think it was 200 euros a year. As like student like tuition fees.
It's like one book.
I was gonna say that's one textbook in America.
I know, but it's like people protested and they were like, "Yeah, fuck that, let's not do it." And so as a consequence, now anybody who comes to Germany can study for free. There's no fee whatsoever, bar some private whatever. But for basically any university, you don't have to pay a single dime, no matter where you are coming from.
They did it in stages. It was salami slicing, right? Like this is how they privatize. So when I went to university, it was free. And then when I did my master's, that was paid for. And then a few years later, they were like, okay, like you have to pay, but it's only $5,000 a year and you'll only pay it back when you're rich and there's no interest on the loan, which are like, that's fair enough. And then now it costs 10 times more. And they're charging interest, quite a high APR on the loan. And it's just gone in increments. And like, you know, when it was first made, it was like, look, why should the average van driver pay for you to study your liberal arts thing? And you're like, well, yeah, fair enough. Like, I don't see why a van driver's salary should be taxed to pay for your philosophy degree. Okay. But now you're at a point where, yeah, just everything gets sold off and we're not richer for it. And we still end up with all the recessions, despite all the austerity.
Do you want to get depressed by how the German system works?
No, can we uplift? Does anyone have any happy stories to end on?
Basically in Germany, it's like you don't pay anything for tuition, and you get like a loan that you don't have to work while studying. And I think the loan is about €1,000, let's say $1,000 a month for the entire duration of your study. And you only have to pay back a certain amount of that. It depends on how much your parents earn, but basically there's a maximum amount. There's no interest, and you only pay back after like 5 years after finishing your degree. And I think the maximum amount of debt you can possibly have is €10,000, but nobody ever has that.
Right.
You don't have to work while studying. You don't have to pay for the actual university.
So this sounds like utopian fantasy, but when the
even better, that you can study abroad and they still pay you.
That's incredible.
I studied in Germany and Japan. The German government paid for it. It's insane.
That sounds like utopia, but when the Pentagon buys missiles, do you think they pay 15% APR?
Yeah. No,
they don't. They get good terms. Yeah. And what bargaining power would all of the country's students have if government actually represented their interests? And what really bothers me, like, I'm still clinging to this. I want to be a capitalist. I want to believe in the system, right? If you were running this country as a company, you would invest in things that had growth. Education's a no fucking brainer.
Yeah,
it's that simple. Like, do we want to end up with a bunch of uneducated idiots? I mean, only if those are the only people that vote for you, I guess.
Well, Chris, in the States, put aside education, right? We can let's just put that in a box and not even look at it. We can't pay for roads, we can't pay for new electricity, and we can't pay for broadband. I mean, that's the way for the capitalists to make more money in the States, right? If everyone had access to the internet.
It's so profitable. China's paying for it in other countries.
Right.
And they're making profit on the deal. So how can America not pay for it for itself?
Yeah, we have the worst internet of the entire industrialized world, and I think a lot of third world countries as well. It's terrible.
And my friend's in Ukraine, and he's just boasting like he's never had such fast internet. It's the cheapest thing he's ever paid for.
Then I have
and over here, I'm praying for Ukrainian internet right now.
I have the best internet service in my city because I have to work from home, and it still shuts off half the time. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? But
late stage capitalism.
Late stage capitalism.
Well, on that wonderful note, I think we might have to wrap things up. I have my benevolent corporate overlords pinging me to go do shit for them. So,
guys, it's been wonderful. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Yeah, sure. I'll fix our microphones, I promise.
Oh, God, yeah. It's not your fault. It's Jeff.
It's Jeff.
Yeah.
He made 200 billion, and now he's like, I can fuck with whoever I want.
I'm pretty sure that Zoom is hosted on Amazon Web Services, so it might actually be Jeff Bezos.
Perfect. We're blaming you, Jeff.
Yeah, this is his cloud. Yeah, we know, Jeff. We're tracking you. Well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate talking to you. It was great.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good luck with the corporate overlords.
Take care.
It's 3:44 here. I'm still on the clock.
You haven't drank enough. That's the problem.
That's true. That's true. Let's see you.
Bye.
Keep that job though. Big depression's coming.
Yeah, I know. I gotta keep.
It's time to command some silence. We can't rule anymore with these lies. Oppressed by a hand of violence. Masked by a smile for disguise. So what's this bullshit that we're selling here? Don't lecture me. See, I ain't buying into the army of hypocrisy. See, you've confused me with somebody who bully again and 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 again. It's time to demand defiance. Why can't we let people be? Led by the fools of ignorance. Side is the real enemy. So what's this bullshit that they're selling here? Don't lecture me. See, I ain't buying into the army of hypocrisy. see. See, you've confused me with somebody, a bully again and 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 again. And again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And again, and again, and again.